Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the channel and welcome to another GT Sport Daily Race C race and strategy guide. Week 49 takes us to the picturesque Alsace or Alsace Village. We're doing it in reverse, which is very nice to see, and we are in the Group 3 machinery. So 10 laps to get round, tyre wear at times 6, fuel at times 2. We've got the racing soft and the racing medium tyres available, both of which should be mandatory, but if they're not, we will take a look at that a little bit later on in the video. BOP is on, it's a rolling start, damage is off and slipstream is real. So yeah, nice to be visiting Alsace Village. I'll be calling it Alsace from this point onwards. Not a track we visit too often in daily races. In fact, in terms of daily race C, we did it not that long ago, probably was actually quite a while ago, in the Group C cars, and before that we actually, I think when we did it in this direction, was probably a couple of years ago in the Group 2 cars. That's before I did any kind of YouTube stuff. I remember really enjoying that race, so when I seen this one coming up in the Group 3 machinery, I was quite looking forward to it. In terms of test car, we're using the jack of all trades, the Mercedes AMG from 2016. Should be a number of cars that should be strong here because of the nature of the track layout. Again, we may touch upon that a little bit later on in the video. And if you're wondering why we're kind of doing it in these settings, the kind of darkish settings, I've just sort of chosen the default setting. When you kind of choose the track, the game sort of has a default setting that it goes to, and it happens to be this kind of dusk conditions. Hopefully it will be in kind of slightly brighter daytime conditions, but yeah, 9 times out of 10 that is the conditions you'll be doing, is just the default ones. So moving on to the strategy, we're going to take a look at the soft medium strategy first. Now we did do some laps on the medium tyres, kind of got ourselves a crossover lap. That was a 154.7. so essentially what I'm saying by that is that once we're kind of doing those kind of lap times, or in that kind of region of 154.7 on our soft tyres, it's time to move on to the fresh mediums because we should be quicker at that point. So let's find out as we're about to jump forward here as to when these soft tyres cross over with the fresh mediums. So jumping forward here to lap number 6, let's take a look at the lap times we've done so far. In the 53s for laps 2, 3 and 4, and then a 54.2 on lap number 5. As we come through the second checkpoint here, you can see we're 7 tenths down on our best lap. So that indicates we're going to do maybe around about 54. 4, maybe a 54.5. Still got a few corners to go here. The carbon's now starting to feel a little bit leery. You can see the tyre wear in the bottom right hand corner there, quite substantial on the soft tyres. A lot of high speed, medium speed corners in this track. So I kind of decided it was now time to get into that pit lane. Now one thing I do want to mention about the pit lane here is its location. It's just as you come out the last corner, immediately on the left hand side. And you're going to see here, even though we give ourselves a nice tight line, it's actually quite easy to go a little bit deep and miss that pit entry. So be respectful to your fellow drivers. Make sure you make your intentions clear as you go into the pit lane, because if you go really wide and then swing across the track, you maybe will have a car in your inside. Make contact with them and yeah, ruin somebody's race that way. Pit X is also going to be quite dangerous. You're coming out into the sort of flow of the traffic, into a couple of slow corners. I can foresee there being some pit lane incidents throughout the week here. But the pit loss, I haven't actually worked it out precisely here. I've just realised once we get, I'll have the precise time of the pit stop in the bit later on in the video with all the information. It's around about 10 seconds though, a very, very short pit loss for these days in Gran Turismo Sport. Fuel, no issue whatsoever. We obviously had a bit of a fuel concerned race last week, so I can't just say what I usually say there, that fuel is never any issue in daily race C, because last week kind of made that null and void. So moving on to our medium tyres, now we pitted on lap 6, finishing there for 54.2. I reckon we're about a 54.4 or 5 maybe for lap number 6 had we continued it, but it does look like we kind of got that pit stop just about spot on. The medium tyres actually feel very, very nice around here. I'm not sure what it is about the track, but I also sort of noticed it when I did my medium soft run as well. The medium tyres, the gap between the medium and the soft tyres does not seem as big as you would expect it to be for a track of this length. So in the low 54s for our first 2 flying laps, we actually finished with a 53.9 here on the medium tyre. So it does look to me around about lap 6 is that optimal kind of spot for changing the tyres. Maybe lap 5 for some of the people not so good on the tyre wear, but I think if you go any further on lap 6, then you're probably just going to be going slower than you could be on the fresh mediums, certainly by the findings that we have uncovered here. So let's move on to the starting on medium strategy. Obviously, this is the strategy you're more likely to run if you're starting towards the back of the grid, or probably in the mid-grid as well, because obviously in that part of the track, when you've got a lot of cars around you, you're probably going to be unable to exploit the soft tyres' full potential just due to fighting with other cars and the traffic. In this case, we've actually left it until lap number 3 to come into the pits. I reckon lap 3, going from the mediums to the softs, is around about that optimal point. Now you can go earlier than that. Obviously this strategy is always about kind of balancing that kind of undercut. How big of an undercut can you get against getting track position over other cars when they then make their pit stop, as to then how worn your tyres are at the end. Obviously the earlier you pit, the bigger the undercut you get, the more likely you are to have track position, but that then comes at the sacrifice of very worn tyres at the end. You can see the AI car here absolutely ruined us on the last lap, just breaking right on the apex. Possibly a Max Verstappen fan, eh? Anyway, moving on to what we were saying there. So obviously, the earlier you pit, the bigger the undercut you get, more likely you are to get track position, but you have worn tyres at the end. The later you leave your pit stop onto the softer compound, then the more chance you have of being undercut, not having as good track position, but then obviously you have better tyres at the end to try and make some moves. Me personally, I would always try and get some track position and then sort of hang on with tyres at the end, only because I'm reasonably decent on tyres, so it's a strategy I can make a little bit more, work a little bit more often. But yeah, in terms of the medium to soft strategy, I reckon lap 3 or 4 will be the optimal for most people, but you can certainly go earlier than that. And it's basically, what are you more comfortable with? Are you more comfortable with driving on the worn tyres at the end, or are you more comfortable having good tyres at the end and then trying to make those overtakes? So finishing there with, I think we're actually about 1.1 seconds than the first run we did. Probably just down to the fact we're just a little bit more comfortable with the car and track combination. So let's move on to that part of the video where we put everything together, talk about what we've just spoke about before, got all that information up on the screen in a nice easy way to read it, just in case you want a little kind of synopsis of everything that we have garnered already. So in terms of the strategy, the soft medium strategy, starting on the soft tyres, probably only going to be really using that if you're starting in the top 4 or 5 positions, where you can then probably exploit the pace of that soft tyre much more readily. Soft tyres will last around about 5 to 6 laps before the fresh mediums will become equal or faster. Those medium tyres actually feel very, very nice in the second stint. Moving on to the medium soft strategy, probably going to be using this strategy more often if you're starting, probably I'd say below P5, you're in the mid pack or you're starting towards the back. Obviously with the traffic you can't exploit the pace of the soft tyres, so there's no point starting on them. Possible to do just a single lap on the mediums, but I'd say the optimum is more like 3 laps, possibly 4 laps, just depending if you're really bad on tyre wear. And as we kind of mentioned earlier, this kind of strategy is always about kind of working out that balance between how big an undercut you can get, how much track position you can gain, and what state your tyres are going to be in towards the end. Obviously the earlier you go for the pit stop, the worse your tyres are at the end. The later you go for your pit stop, the more exposed you are, I guess, to being undercut by other drivers, losing out on track position, and you're then going to have to make that overtake or start making some overtakes with the fresh tyres, which should be possible on this track. There's a lot of corners here where once the tyres start to go, you'll really start to suffer. So yeah, just do what you find most comfortable when you do the medium soft strategy. As I said, for myself, I'm quite good on tyres. I could probably go earlier than a lot of other drivers, but for those drivers who are not so good in tyres, they need to maybe leave a little bit later and then just have the better tyres towards the end of the race. So that's how I see the strategy working out if it's both the soft and the medium tyres that are mandatory. But 2 things I do want to very, very quickly touch on is, one being the 2 stopper. Because of the very short pit lane loss, well, around about 10 seconds, So only around about 5 seconds slower on paper to actually do a two-stopper. In reality, it'll probably be a little bit more than that because of the traffic and the loss of track position. As I said, not exactly viable, but maybe if you're just some super fast driver and you want to give yourself a challenge, it's maybe something to look at. And the other possibility is if it's only the medium tyres that are mandatory, you then can do a no-stopper. Because of the short pit lane loss, again, I don't think the finishing time will be that different compared to a one-stop. I haven't tested this yet, I will test it, and I will put my finishing time in the description for you to compare against the two one-stop strategies that we did. But let's move on to a lap guide now of Alsace Village 2 in reverse, in towards turn number 1 here. Now see where the wall goes black and white on the left hand side, that's your reference as you break into turn number 1. Keep it a nice straight line, sacrifice a little bit of speed for turn number 1 so you get a much better line out of turn number 2, and then use all that power all the way up the hill here. Keep it to the left hand side, just before the start of the curb on the left there is your braking reference for the downhill right hand, and carry more speed in there than you might expect, and then we come to an extremely tight left-hander, tighter than you think it is. A lot of people are going to go on the throttle here too early and understeer wide, so try and find a sort of reference point where you know once you get on the power the car is going to remain on the track. Full throttle through the little kink to the right hand side there, and then into a large banked left-hander. Keep it all the way, or I actually like to keep it lower into that left-hander. There's a sign there on the right-hand side, that's my reference point into this fast right-hander. Just better on the throttle, carry as much speed as you can. Watch for the little bump on this curb here, it will kind of jut the car to the left-hand side, sorry, the right-hand side, and possibly throw you off. This corner here opens up a little bit more than you might expect, so you're on the throttle a little bit earlier. Bit of camber in there as well to try and help the car round. This very fast right-hander, you don't need to use the brakes, just come off the throttle, let the car roll round, and then get the car over to the right-hand side for this left-hander here. Again, use the camber. There's kind of two ways you can do that corner. You can kind of use the camber and keep it tight, or you can go wide and make sure you get on the throttle a little bit earlier, both of which seem to work quite well. Now we've got the run down towards the final tight left-hander. Overtaking opportunity is just before the start of the curb on the right hand side is your reference. Down into second gear, got to be kind of late on the throttle, feels like you're waiting forever to get the car on the throttle, and that is a lap of Alsace Village 2 in the Mercedes-Benz, and I'm very much looking forward to this one, I must say. One thing I did forget to talk about is car selection. Now, I'm never very good at choosing what's going to be the best car for any given week. It's just something I have never managed to get on top of. But for this week I will give you my thoughts. I think because of the nature of the circuit, quite a tricky technical first sector and a fast flowing, lots of high speed, medium speed corners in the second part of the track. No long straights to speak of, so it's not going to be a track dominated by the power cars. However, I still think the Toyota Supra is probably going to be one of the top cars. I think the FT1 from Toyota might be slightly better. I think the Volkswagen Beetle will be pretty strong, and also the WRX and the Mitsubishi Evo should stand up there quite highly as well. In terms of the MR cars like the Audi that we're looking at, they should be pretty quick, but because of the kind of second half of the track, lots of very high speed corners which we expect these cars to be strong at. Some of them have got some very unusual cambers. That tends to make the back end of these cars step out very easily, and then in race trim that's going to exacerbate that rear tyre wear. Now, that's not to say you're not going to be able to make use of these cars, I just don't think they're for me. I would much rather have some good stability. That's why I chose the Mercedes for the guide. The Mercedes felt very nice round here. I'd be looking for stability over absolute raw speed at this track. But that's my thoughts on the cars. It remains to be seen which one will come out on top at the end. But that's pretty much my conclusions for this video. Hopefully it's been useful in some way, shape or form. I'm going to try and live stream this one quite a lot. I'm going to set myself a fairly interesting challenge that I will introduce during the first live stream. That way it will be on Monday, just a couple of hours after this video goes live. If not, it'll be a little bit later in the week. But do join me for that if you can. And until then, thank you very much for watching. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.